It was the morning of April 2nd, 1988. A quiet day in Kansas City was just about to begin. The streets were calm, and the city was waking slowly, completely unaware of the nightmare about to spill out into the open. Not long after dawn, he jumped, wearing nothing but a dog collar, bleeding, battered, and screaming for his life. A young man had hurled himself from a second-story window, breaking his foot in the process. Every nerve was now on fire, and every thought was consumed by one crucial goal: survival. Naked, terrified, and desperate, he hobbled toward the first safe haven he could see, a neighbour's open porch. When nobody answered, he moved as quickly as he could towards a meter reader who was working down the road. He started shouting, begging, crying for the man's help. He tried to explain what had happened to him, but he could not find the words. The police were called soon after, and the young man was now safe. Inside a modest 3-story house on Charlotte Street, the man had been held captive for more than 4 days, though it felt like 4 weeks. He had been restrained, violated, tortured, humiliated, and left entirely at the mercy of a man who delighted in control. A man who introduced himself simply as Bob. He had just become the only known survivor of Robert Berdella, a man later known all over the world as the Kansas City Butcher. That moment, that single terrifying leap, shattered the carefully constructed world of the man behind the butcher. To those that knew him, he was a polite man, a charming man, a quiet antique shop owner, and a man who smiled easily and blended seamlessly into the city around him. However, behind closed doors of his home, he had been systematically imprisoning, torturing, killing, and potentially even consuming multiple men, hiding a nightmare in plain sight. By the time investigators finally stepped foot inside 4135 Charlotte Street, what they found was beyond anything they could have imagined. What investigators uncovered that day was not just the end of a nightmare, but the beginning of a story so dark, so calculated, and so deliberate that it will force an entire city to confront how easily evil can wear a human face. How was Robert Berdella able to abduct, imprison, and torture multiple men in a densely populated residential neighbourhood without drawing any meaningful suspicion from neighbours, friends, or authorities? What warning signs existed in his behaviour, background, and personal relationships that, if properly recognised, might have exposed the danger he posed long before his arrest? Why did Berdella develop such an extreme need for domination, control, and human suffering that would become central to his sense of identity? And when should the cumulative patterns, multiple missing men, disturbing public behaviours, unexplained injuries, and social isolation have raised flags clear enough to prompt police intervention?
Hello and welcome to I Could Murder a Podcast. We are back once again, and I'm joined by the Cambridgeshire baker, Benny, and the Bedfordshire biker boy, Danny. Welcome, guys.
That's great, Tom. I like that. More of that, please.
Thank you so much.
Linked to this week's case, but how are you doing, guys?
Yeah, trying to think of one for you now. We'd make a right little crew. Dan on the bike, me mixing some dough, and you in the crew as well.
Yeah, just the crew hanging around, lurking around the back of the crew. Just going, yeah.
Oh.
Checking your exhaust.
Yeah, please.
I was full of dough.
You got me. Yes. But speaking of localities and nicknames, wow, the Kansas City Butcher. This is a case that falls into more, I mean, it's in the darkest series ever, but classic true crime case territory. And this is one that we've had requests for literal years, like maybe 4 of them. Wow. I have to admit, with a name like the Kansas City Butcher, the case and the individual responsible, neither of them were what I expected.
Yes.
I had kind of an Ed Gein, H.H. Holmes vibe in mind, something there, and we got Robert Berdella instead. Not what I was expecting, really not what I was expecting. Doesn't strike me as a butcher.
How you doing, man?
Yeah, very good. I was about to say, it makes you think you can never really trust your neighbours, right?
100%.
Although I do trust all my neighbours, to be fair. But you never know.
Mistake.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm very intrigued to get into this one because it's also, obviously, a lot of the words we're going to be talking about are disgusting and gruesome, but the word captivity always makes me shudder. I don't like that one. So, a lot of that today.
I've just got new neighbours and bloody, it's going phenomenally so far for all of us involved. So trust your neighbours at the same time if you want.
Why would you say it's going phenomenally?
You don't have to.
What's happening there?
Because I had bad neighbours before then, and now I'm in a great place.
Contrast.
Yes, yeah. Oh, the life I'm living now, Dan. Put each other's bins out.
Oh.
It's lovely.
Ooh.
It's lovely.
Go through each other's bins. Sometimes they haven't finished some things, and, one man's trash. But yes, Ben, I mean, you've already kind of done it, but what is today's case?
So we are here to discuss the case of Robert A. Berdella, also referred to as the Kansas City Butcher, the Collector Murders, Bob's Bizarre Bazaar of Horrors, the Bondage Serial Killings, and the House on the Corner of Charlotte Street. I don't know why that title bothers me the most compared to all the others. The House on the Corner of Charlotte Street. Ooh,
sounds like a song from Sweeney Todd. The last one. Well, all of them, to be fair.
Yeah.
Could definitely work in the Sweeney Todd sphere. Oh, and there is the holy moment. Which holy are we drinking today, boys?
Well, this morning, Tom, I am on the peach and black tea holy iced tea. What a lovely blend. Traditionally had a love-hate relationship with hydration, and holy has fixed that for me. Can't get enough. I'm nearly drowning myself. Sorry.
Yeah, very dry boy. What about you, Dan?
I'm actually on my last hydration one, which is white peach. I've gone right through them. It's absolutely fantastic, actually. I'm addicted. But these also, boys...
It's mixing it live.
I'm doing it live. These tumblers are fantastic. The build quality.
Oh, yeah.
The non-slip base. If you put that down and try and slip it over, it's not going to happen.
Not that you guys asked, but lime mint matcha green tea. I went more for it today. I've been smashing them. I smashed one yesterday before going to the gym and genuinely felt an energy boost before going, which I've been saying to my pals lately that things, and other energy drinks, which I won't name, boo hiss, I wasn't getting any kind of kick from, and legit felt full of beans when I went to the gym. And energy drink.
I'm surprised at how many flavours Holy have got. It's mad. I expected about 7, but there's about 30 odd.
They reeled me in with the old milkshake variety as well, which doesn't have milk in it, but tastes like it does. What sorcery is that?
And guys, we're not going to gatekeep Holy. If you keep an eye on the socials, we're going to be doing a giveaway so you guys can win a free goodie box of the Holy stuff. I was buzzed when I received my box of the Holy stuff, all the items, all different things. It was a colour overload, flavour overload, like Dan said. So be sure to follow our socials, keep an eye out, and we'll be doing a giveaway over on there.
And guys, if you fancy ordering from Holy, just use our discount code ICMAP5 for a £5 discount on your first order, or just simply ICMAP for 10% off. And I think the link will be down here somewhere. Bonsi, won't it? Click the link. Well, you can't click it on the screen, but it'll be in the description as well. Follow the link for your first Holy order.
So guys, from a bunch of boys who have enjoyed an energy drink or two in our time, why not join us in ditching the bullshit, ditching the sugar, ditching the taurine, and get on the soft drink revolution that is Holy. Oh.
But now, as we always do, we're going to explore the early life of Robert Andrew Berdella and see what caused him to turn into the Kansas City Butcher.
So long before he became the Kansas City Butcher, Robert Andrew Berdella Jr., who went by Bob for most of his life, was born on the 31st of January 1949 in the city of Cuyahoga Falls, which is in Summit County, Ohio. He was the eldest of 2 boys born to Robert Andrew Berdella Sr. and Mary Louise Huffman, having a younger brother called Daniel. And so, yeah, basically a Bobby Berdella or a Bobby Jr. Before he became the Butcher, which I thought was very Sopranos, all of those things. Maybe even Lilyhammer.
Bobby Berdella.
Bobby Berdella.
Bobby
Jr.
The Butcher. Are we going to have a problem here, Daniel?
Afraid to say I've never seen The Sopranos, so I can't join in really.
Last week on the Minnesota Game of Thrones, and now Sopranos.
It's pathetic, isn't it?
Game of Thrones I get, but
I don't
Sopranos.
get. Tom went, it's just dragons and stuff. That really upset Ollie when you said that. Because I showed him my little AI thing of New Jersey Game of Thrones.
Oh, it's getting cold and winter is also on its way. Dragons. Or Sopranos. You would like Sopranos, but it might be a bit slow for you, Dan.
Yeah.
It is good.
I don't mind slow if the script's good.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. One of the best ever.
Okay, check it out then.
In the comments, guys, Dan, should he, if he had a week left to live, we probably need longer.
Question.
Game of Thrones or Sopranos? Which one should he do?
Let me know, please.
I think Sopranos will probably.
I mean, famously, the ending of, well, both of them get ripped to shreds, but I think Game of Thrones got ripped to shreds more.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to Talking Sopranos in a few weeks to see Michael Imperioli and Steve Schirripa.
Very cool.
Barbie and Christopher. Excited. But anyway, enough about that.
Yeah.
Enough about that. Let's get back to this case.
So as May explained, his particularly Italian-sounding name, Berdella's father's side of the family were Italian, whilst his mother's side were a mix of British and German. Oh, Dan.
Deadly mix.
No, we're all friends now.
No, I didn't mean that. Don't mention the war. No.
His father's side of the family was strict Roman Catholics, and Berdella was told to take his religion extremely seriously from a very early age. He would attend Mass together with his family every Sunday, and he and his younger brother would be made to regularly attend out-of-school religious education classes. So what I heard is that his dad, we'll talk about it a bit more, but Bobby Sr., Robert Andrew Berdella Sr., was a very traditional man, believed in athleticism and sports and being a man ahead of everything else, and that would create a really, really interesting dynamic between he and his younger brother in the years to come. But he basically worked at a Ford manufacturing power plant, was away a long time, so they got sent to out-of-school religious education classes. From an early age, Berdella stood out as a highly intelligent but deeply withdrawn child. He spent much of his time shut away inside the family home, rarely playing outdoors and almost never inviting friends over to socialize. Social interaction did not come easily to him, nor did he really crave it, and this sense of isolation was made worse by a number of physical and medical issues that would soon enter his life. So firstly, he had a very noticeable speech impediment, and from the age of 5 had to wear a pair of thick-framed glasses due to, quote, severe nearsightedness. On top of that, he was diagnosed with high blood pressure just a few years later, which is considered an unusual condition for such a young child. For this, he required several medications to manage it, which he had to take on a daily basis. These health issues made him feel different from the other children, and in many ways they helped to reinforce the isolation that would follow him through much of his life. From the age of 6 onwards, Berdella already felt unmistakably different. Physically, he was unathletic and awkward, which seemed to greatly irritate his father. And yeah, this irritation only deepened as he grew older. Especially when his younger brother Daniel, who was 7 years his junior, would go on to become almost the complete opposite. Effortlessly skilled in sports and full of physical confidence. We all know a Daniel like that.
And really long-sighted as well, severe long-sightedness.
Yeah, it was a curse.
300 metres away to read it. It was a nightmare restaurant with menus.
So yeah, young Daniel had it all, but apparently was far less intelligent than Robert Berdella. Their father valued athleticism above almost everything else, but Berdella's lack of interest or ability in sports was often seen as a significant personal failure. Negative comparisons to Daniel were frequent, belittling and harsh, and discipline in the Berdella home could be brutal. Their father was known to resort to physical punishment, sometimes beating the boys extensively with a leather strap for the slightest misbehaviors, and emotional cruelty was also not uncommon. So yeah, this physical violence was apparently much more focused towards Robert rather than Daniel, who was the golden child. And yeah, him seeing his dad absolutely cherish, his much younger brother and view him as, insignificant would be a chip on his shoulder for much of his life.
Academically, Berdella did well, but some of his teachers suggested that he was very difficult to get through to. He was apparently very socially awkward, spending a lot of his time stuck in a daydream, and was also a regular target of bullying by other students, which only pushed him further inward. He avoided any chance of socialising when possible, preferring the quiet, controlled world of his own making over the unpredictability of his peers. He had very few friends and was described as being even less close with the rest of his family as he grew older. When puberty arrived, through months of reflection, Berdella came to realise that he was homosexual. At first, he kept this fact deeply hidden, aware that any kind of disclosure at that time could lead to further ridicule, or potentially far worse. As a result, he did not become openly comfortable with his sexuality for several years, and chose to repress it. Though it is noted that he did briefly have a girlfriend in his early teens, it was written off as a short-lived attempt at fitting in or testing the waters of normalcy. Even in childhood, the outlines of Berdella's inner world were taking unusual shape. Intelligence shadowed by isolation, curiosity constrained by secrecy, and a family home filled with strict rules, violence, harsh comparisons, and fear. By his mid-teens, subtle changes began to take hold in Berdella's already unusual behaviour. One minute he could be incredibly friendly and approachable. The next he could be rude, dismissive, and increasingly condescending toward others, especially towards women. And while this aggression was rarely explosive, it was very distinct and recognisable. At the same time, he began to develop skills that, in his mind, allowed him to feel competent, even impressive, in small, controlled settings. He learned how to cook, he explored the art world more seriously, and he discovered that he enjoyed performance art and film. The careful presentation of himself, the ability to hold people's attention, and to manipulate how others appeared to see him. On Christmas Day of 1965, when Berdella was just 15 years old, the fragile structure of his family life collapsed entirely. The Berdellas had travelled almost an hour away of the city of Canton, Ohio, in order to spend time with relatives for the holiday.
Yeah, Canton, I recognise that straight away. Not Cantonar, but Canton, Ohio. We were there for, well, we weren't there for, but when we covered the case of James Huberty, the San Isidro McDonald's massacre, and the ages were very different at that point, but he would have been around that area as well. Just the more you know.
More you know indeed. That evening, Berdella's father, who was just 39 years old at the time, suffered a sudden and significant heart attack. 2 days later, Berdella went home alone to Cuyahoga Falls. When he arrived, he was told by his family, who was still in Canton, that his father had passed away in hospital. The man who had ruled the household through fear, punishment, and expectation was suddenly, irrevocably, gone. In the years that followed, Berdella turned even more inward. At first, he sought comfort in religion, immersing himself deeply in Catholic doctrine and theology, reading obsessively. Not just about Catholicism, but about faith itself. Over time, that devotion curdled into cynicism. The structure that had once promised meaning now felt completely hollow, and Berdella began to reject religion altogether. Not with any kind of relief, but with total resentment. He hated the power and control his father had on him, and he hated religion for it too. Around the same time period, Berdella encountered something else that would leave a very lasting impression. During the winter of 1965, he had watched the film adaptation of John Fowles' novel, The Collector. So to any of our keen-eyed listeners or our lovely viewers, you may recognise the name The Collector. It has been in a previous case. I'm going to give you 3 seconds to figure out which one it was. Now for some of you, well done. And others to you, sadly, bad miss. It was Leonard Lake and Charles Ng episode we did last series, but they were more obsessed with the book rather than the film.
Is this the one I took some slack for saying? Well, not really slack, but I was like, I'd like to read that. But because I want to understand why they were, not because,
You're like, I quite fancy a collection of my own. And I was like, what does that mean? Why is he speaking in that voice as well? And you're like, and you start quivering.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I think you did get a bit of flack for it. And some people said it was not enough flack, which interesting to hear from those people every once in a while. But yes, so this book, it follows a story of a deeply disturbed man who stalks and abducts young women. Yeah, Ben, you didn't get enough flack for it. Eventually imprisoning her in his home, reducing her to an object. Ben not painting you in a good light. Possession, a specimen to be controlled and observed.
That's not why I want to read it. It's an interesting story. It's just fiction, right? It's fiction.
But some people have taken it as a how-to.
Well, obviously, yes. Or,
abduction for dummies. With the captor convinced that the captive will eventually fall in love with him. How's it go?
I still would read it just to try and get in, why is this? Because it's not just Charles Ng, Leonard Lake and Berdella. There are a bunch of other criminals that this book has really done things to them. And I want to understand that element. Don't want to understand the book or take any inspiration from it. Just want to read it. Curious mind.
Explains why I saw you the other day in a coffee shop eating Mein Kampf.
Eating? That is fucking strange.
I think I did say this same joke last time as well, probably.
Imagine being in a coffee shop eating Mein Kampf.
Yeah.
It's a political statement.
Yeah, what you eat, I guess.
Sorry. Just because that's what I was eating. And it came back up. My food came back up. Yeah.
Years later, Berdella would openly admit that the film stayed with him, embedding itself quietly but permanently in his imagination.
I'd just put it back on the shelf and forget about it.
I don't know if you would, mate. Knowing you. I also do this box room. I could maybe put some change up there. I don't know. I'm silly.
Not very long after his father's death, Berdella's mother remarried. To him, this was not a step towards stability from his mother. It was a total betrayal to his recently deceased father. The resentment he carried grew worse, and he withdrew further from any kind of family life, retreating almost entirely to solitary pursuits. He constantly shut himself away. He started painting. He started reading. He collected coins and stamps. He ate alone. He began writing letters to potential foreign pen pals, sending multiple letters to Vietnam and Burma, asking his new friends to potentially swap stamps, photographs, and images of ancient cultures, religious icons, and so-called primitive art with him.
So he's that kind of collector. If he was just that, if that's what he got from it, goes, oh, collecting's fun. You'd be like, that's quite nice. And that's like nice to write to other people in different cultures and learn from them. And that's lovely. How does a man that's living a life like this is what's fascinating. He just seems a bit nerdy in a nice way. Not quirky. Saying, quirky. But like, just has certain interesting little interests. But it gets very dark. But how does he go from that to that?
Yeah, I also think, because obviously this part where his dad passes away, they're all over in Canton. His dad's rushed to a hospital in Canton and they say, oh, Robert, go home. But everyone else stays there and they only just give him a phone call a few days later, say, by the way, dad's dead. I just think that's really, I know he didn't have the closest relationship with his dad, but that's just, again, they're kind of ostracizing him from the family here. He's then retreating inwards. He's got a lot of health conditions developed early on. His mental health's not in a great state either. Yeah, he's watched this film and I wish that the message was just, oh, collecting's fun. And I wish, Charles and Leonard Lake thought the same thing. But the escalation here is massive.
He then found a really rare stamp and lived happily ever after. Oh, where does the butcher?
So the objects we just mentioned immediately fascinated him. They represented distance, control, and ownership. By the mid-1960s, he had begun actively collecting antiques, a habit that would later evolve into something far more significant. In the summer of 1967, Berdella graduated from Cuyahoga Falls High School with excellent grades. Academically, his potential was undeniable. One teacher had even placed him into an independent study program the year before, a rare opportunity reserved only for students considered exceptional.
Didn't you boys both get put into special classes?
X group.
No, I went to a certain day, which was they did like talks, and it's for people who scored a certain score on the CATS test were able to go. So I did really well on my CATS test, which was all kind of like pattern, like recognising patterns and all those kind of brain testing things. And I scored really highly in that. But then later on in school, I was like, I'm not really trying, which is not a cool thing to do. Definitely try at school. And so I wasn't like in lessons maintaining that. But then some people who were in top sets didn't do well in that. So I went to this special day and they're like, why is Tom going? I'm like,
And Dan, you X class?
Yeah, X group for exceptionals.
X group.
Bit of a two-tier situation going on there, but I didn't. A bit like Tom, I didn't really apply myself, so I feel like I was at the bottom of the X group, but still in the top, section. So I'll take it.
Nice. X group sounds interesting. That's
might surprise some viewers, some listeners. I didn't get invited, so I didn't get the chance to apply myself, but I didn't apply myself also. So it's kind of a catch-22 situation.
You didn't get invited if you fit the grade, though. It's not in case you didn't.
Yeah, well, if I knew that maybe an invite might have been on the table, I might have tried a bit harder beforehand before I stopped trying altogether. But definitely, as Tom said, try hard at school.
Apply yourself.
Because otherwise...
Please.
Yeah, apply yourself at school. Yeah. Because
hey, knowledge is cool. And this is a big shout out to our sponsor this week, books.
Sponsored by books.
It's not just an ornament, people. Get it off the shelf, read it. Oh, Moby Dick, he was big. It's a whale, Dan. If you read,
I know it's a fucking whale.
Oh, Pinocchio. Why he fibbing all the time? He gets eaten by a whale as well. Yeah, books. Give him a shot.
Anyway.
There you go.
Shortly after graduation, Berdella left Ohio entirely, relocating almost 1,000 miles away to Kansas City, Missouri, in order to attend the Kansas City Art Institute. Here, he started to fantasize about a future as a college professor, someone respected, intellectual, and authoritative.
Let's see how this goes, because that could be another happy end to the story, you know? Got the stamps he wanted and retired.
I feel like he's coming up to a lot of emotional crossroads and then just taken the wrong path.
That's a great shout.
At first, he thrived. He was noted as attentive, talented, and dedicated. But by his second year, something shifted. He grew openly anti-government, gravitating towards a small group of students who introduced him to drugs. Almost instantly, Berdella began selling the drugs he'd obtained on for profit, and consumed some of them himself. Alcohol abuse became his regular. His behaviour grew riskier and much darker. On at least 2 occasions, he engaged in public acts of animal cruelty. On one highly disturbing instance, he grabbed hold of a duck by a local pond before decapitating it in front of a small group of his peers, and later claiming to have cooked it for the sake of art. In another, he lured a stray dog from the streets before beating it and subsequently experimenting on it with various sedatives and tranquilizers, testing the effects and observing outcomes. It is speculated that other students were very much aware of all of this, but neither distressing incident was reported to the police. Which is strange, because, I mean, if I witnessed that, I don't care who you are, mate, I'm going straight to the top.
Blower.
Early 70s, though. I know, like, it's hard to picture, but obviously we know what that leads to because of we've covered it in 1,000,001 cases. But it could also be one of the things you have that rumor of, oh, that kid lives in a shed. Obviously, very different to killing a dog in the street. But there's rumours, things circulating. You just kind of think that could be true, but that is true.
Well, him being interested in cooking and then later working as a chef, it just sounds like he's turned around, snapped a duck's neck and gone, oh, I'm cooking this. Whereas the fact that he's done that publicly, and then, I mean, the dog situation, the people also being aware of that and not seeing what he's done, behind closed doors, this is all a bit terrifying now. And this is all him practicing and putting things into, testing.
I just want to cover my ass here. 100% would call the police. I'm just saying, and definitely should do that. I'm not saying, oh, well, he's just a bit quirky. 100% call the police. And I would too as well. But I'm just saying, if you go back in the day of that time, perhaps people didn't thought slightly differently.
By the time he turned 19 years old, Berdella was arrested for attempting to sell methamphetamine to an undercover police officer. He posted bond shortly after he was detained and was later given a 5-year suspended sentence. Despite this, just 1 month later, he was arrested once again, this time for the possession of marijuana and LSD. Unable to post bond on this occasion, he spent 5 days in jail before the charges were eventually dropped due to an apparent lack of evidence. By the end of his teenage years, Berdella had already begun to reveal a pattern, a growing fixation on control, experimentation, and transgression. A young man who felt overlooked, restrained, and wronged by society, who was now quietly testing the boundaries of power, morality, and consequence. The pieces were falling into place, even if no one yet understood what they were forming. But the worst was still yet to come.
In 1969, aged 20, Berdella is alleged to have voluntarily withdrawn from the Kansas City Art Institute after apparently receiving harsh criticism from multiple administrators following an incident in which he killed and cooked a duck as part of a quote-unquote art project. So yeah, he's tried to turn it into, this is for my studies.
Maybe you're studying for his mock duck.
So yes, rather than returning to his family in Ohio, he instead chose to remain in Kansas City. And this choice of remaining in Kansas would be, this would be a big part of the case. That September, he moved into a modest 3-story house at 4315 Charlotte Street, located in the Hyde Park district, a decision that would quietly shape the rest of his life and become a pivotal choice in the context of this case. By this point, Berdella had been a private and discreetly gay man for many years. Now alone with a detached home of his own, he began spending much of his time with men who lived on the margins of the city. Male sex workers, drug users, petty criminals, homeless people, and runaways. As would later become his morbid routine, He typically befriended them first, positioning himself as a source of stability, warmth, and guidance. He later claimed that he saw himself almost as a foster parent to these men, attempting to help them escape addiction or criminal lifestyles. But beneath that framing, the relationships were almost completely unequal. Berdella often loaned them money, offered them food, or allowed men to stay in his home entirely rent-free, gradually establishing financial, emotional, and physical control on his tenants. By the late 1970s, he was working with the local South Hyde Park Crime Prevention and Neighbourhood Association, eventually becoming its chairman. So basically, big part of Neighbourhood Watch, this guy, really immersed himself there. He would then encourage neighbourhood patrols, attend meetings, and position himself as a protector of the area. He also volunteered at fundraising events for a local public television station, and he did all of this whilst providing housing to some of the many desperate men he encountered. So yeah, he's basically networking here. He's keeping up appearance, trying to appear like a great influence on the local society, a great person to be in your network, and he's then befriending lots of different men in the area on the kind of fringes of society, which will later play a big part in this case. So despite later protestations to the contrary, many of these relationships became sexual. And by the early 1980s, now deep into his 30s, as peers drifted away from him, Berdella increasingly relied on these young men for companionship. To the outside world, Berdella appeared a little eccentric but socially responsible. Neighbours described him as flamboyant, opinionated, and occasionally aloof, but also as someone who was very helpful and active in their community. Despite the somewhat ugly appearance of his property and gardens, he was deeply involved in the local community. To many, Berdella was not a threat, he was an asset. And there's also this other story about he had a couple of serious relationships with other men in his life, but because at that time, and especially under his father's roof, homosexuality would have been considered a sin, and so he kept this to himself for many, many years. There's basically a story that he had a long-held relationship with a partner who was a Vietnam veteran, and that became physically and sexually abusive very, very quickly. But it's quite a murky story as to whether Berdella was the aggressor or this partner was. So over the next few years, financially, he kept himself busy in order to keep the property on Charlotte Street. He worked as a short-order cook in various Kansas City restaurants in order to pay off legal fees from earlier drug arrests, whilst simultaneously selling art and antiques that he had acquired through international contacts in Africa, Asia, South America, and the Pacific Rim. So yeah, he's really networking all over the world at this point. As a sign of his intelligence and dedication, both ventures were a big success. Within just a few years, Berdella was working as a senior cook at respected restaurants across Kansas City. He also joined a local chefs association and helped to form a culinary training program at a local community college. At the same time, his antiques business rapidly expanded due to huge demand. By the early 1980s, he had secured national and international contracts from all over the world and would eventually abandon cooking altogether, viewing himself first and foremost as a professional antiques dealer. This is kind of a unique element to this case. In 1982, Berdella began renting a booth at the Westport Flea Market, and at this particular booth, which he named Bob's Bizarre Bazaar, he created a space devoted to primitive art, jewelry, and curiosities. And yeah, we'll for the visual folks, we'll pop his business card on the screen for you. Not a sponsorship. This is just factual. Yeah, Bob's Bizarre Bazaar. Ethnological curiosities from the world's far corners. And there you've got his name, his location, and his mobile number.
It's quite impressive, actually.
The old Westport Flea Market.
That's the only impressive thing about him. But
I think from a kid who was bullied, his father was, incredibly abusive as well, is lacking confidence. The fact that he's so ingrained within the community, and some of the things he is doing is genuinely great for the community, helping with young chefs, even obviously on the surface when you see it from the outside, helping with homeless people and helping trying to get people's lives back on track. Obviously that's marred with everything else that happened, so I'm not taking that point completely that way, but and the fact that he's able to maintain a network of people with antiques and all that stuff it's not the life you thought he'd lead following on from his childhood. And obviously he's got some charm and business acumen. But yeah, it's a very fascinating life he's already lived to this point. And as I said, like, it still doesn't really make sense as to why it goes where it goes. But yeah, it's a very interesting case.
Very, very present in the community as well, which I was not expecting. I was expecting him to get this house and then just be shut away in this house and then start, doing what he's done. But he's been described as flamboyant by his neighbours. He's leading different things in the community, Crime Watch, or the equivalent of Crime Watch, neighbourhood patrols. It's very different to what we'd normally experience in a case like this. So though the business brought in some good money initially, it was very rarely enough. To supplement his income, Berdella sometimes stole or even scavenged items to sell, and he took in additional lodgers at Charlotte Street. It was at the Westport flea market that he became acquainted with another vendor, the vendor on the stall next to his, and this was Mr. Paul Howell. And soon after becoming friends with Paul, as a result of that meeting, he became friends with Howell's teenage son, Jerry. First, Jerry and his friends mocked Berdella for his sexuality, his mannerisms, and his appearance. However, months later, at least according to Berdella, the teenage Jerry quietly confided to him that he and his friends occasionally engaged in sex work for older gentlemen in order to generate an income. If the words of Berdella are to be believed, because he's the only witness to this, apparently Jerry and his friends were being quite homophobic towards him, and then as soon as his friends went away, Jerry would actually take a bit of a shine to him. I don't know how much you can take Berdella's word for truth here, because it just seems like it's actually Berdella who's kind of obsessed with him, which we'll go on to explain. But apparently, according to Berdella, Jerry basically went up to him and said, "By the way, me and my friends sometimes engage in sex work." So the secretive connection with the teenager lingered for many years, with Berdella often giving him advice whenever Jerry had issues with the local police. Which, to be fair, we didn't even touch on. He could have been put away for many, many years for those different drug offences, trying to sell to an undercover officer, possession, and then he did 5 days in the end? That's wild. So by the summer of 1984, not long after Jerry had turned 19 years old, Berdella's secret and sinister world, carefully constructed over more than a decade, was about to rapidly shift. And Jerry would, unfortunately, be the first to be caught in this new nightmare world. And it is here that we move to the timeline of Robert Berdella, the Kansas City Butcher.
July 5th, 1984, Kansas City, Missouri. 19-year-old Jerry Howell entered 4315 Charlotte Street, a house he already knew, and a man he believed he already understood. Earlier that night, Berdella had promised to drive Jerry 8 miles south to a dancing contest in the city of Merriam. Not as many dancing contests these days, are there? Well, maybe I'm just not aware of them. When was the last time, Dan, you've been in a dancing contest?
Last Saturday, actually. Came second. Need to try
That's
harder.
nice. Usually you come first. Because you're so good at dancing. Horizontally. Even though, after my little joke there, it wasn't an unusual offer. By this point, Berdella had frequently positioned himself as someone Jerry could rely on. Helpful, connected, older, perhaps even a little infatuated. But instead of heading to Merriam, the night slowly shifted behind closed doors. According to Berdella, Jerry was given a large amount of alcohol, along with a cocktail of Valium and asapromazine. First in the car and later back inside the house. As the summonses took effect, Jerry became increasingly disorientated and eventually unconscious. Once he was no longer able to resist, Berdella injected him with a heavy tranquilizer and restrained him to a bed inside the house. For the next 28 hours, Jerry Howell was held captive. During that time, Berdella maintained total control. Jerry was repeatedly drugged to keep him compliant, drifting in and out of consciousness throughout the unrelenting ordeal, as Berdella subjected him to prolonged abuse and torment. Berdella proceeded to molest, torture, and repeatedly rape the 19-year-old, whilst also violating him numerous times with various household objects, with Berdella claiming to have used carrots and cucumbers. Whenever Jerry regained enough awareness to ask why this was happening to him, and plead to be released, those questions were ignored. The house in the corner of Charlotte Street remained quiet, isolated, and uninterrupted. At some point whilst he was strapped to the bed, perhaps to Berdella's surprise, Jerry Howell suddenly died. In that moment, he became what is widely documented as the first victim of the Kansas City Butcher. Berdella would later claim that Jerry either suffocated in his own vomit, or that the combination of the gag being too tight and the drugs being too strong prevented him from being able to breathe adequately whilst he was out of the room. He never took full responsibility for causing the death himself. The exact manner mattered less than the outcome. Berdella did not panic, and Jerry Howell never left 4315 Charlotte Street. Though Berdella would later also claim that he tried to resuscitate Jerry using CPR, many people found this somewhat difficult to believe. Not long after he died, Berdella carried his body to the basement. Here, he made the decision to hang Jerry's body above a large cooking pot, before he made several cuts to his body, focusing on the areas he knew would leak the most blood. He cut his neck, his wrists and his inner elbows, severing his jugular vein in the process, whilst leaving the cooking pot to collect Jerry's blood overnight. The following afternoon, he dismembered Jerry's corpse in the basement with a chainsaw, all whilst the rest of the world continued about their day. He then wrapped various body parts in newspaper before placing them in several double-up bin bags. After this, he boldly placed the bin bags directly outside his house, which were later collected and taken to a landfill site. With Jerry Howell's death, Robert Berdella had not simply committed murder, he had crossed the threshold. He learned that he could abduct, restrain and kill, and that the world outside his front door would remain unchanged. No neighbours intervened, no authorities came knocking, and the quiet life he had so carefully constructed did not collapse, it held. And in that moment, fantasy became practice, and control became permanent. When later questioned by the officers looking into Jerry's sudden disappearance, and also by the young man's father, Berdella remained adamant that he had taken the young man to a dance contest in Merriam, but that the pair had separated outside the venue. Berdella also claimed that he had not seen him since then, and was also worried about his well-being. His house and basement was never searched, as would become the case with all of Berdella's future murders and encounters. He decided to keep a highly disturbing detailed log documenting every act of sexual and physical torture he inflicted on his victim. Berdella would later remember that, like his later victims, Jerry had repeatedly begged him to stop the abuse and torture, but Berdella would either disregard these pleas, mock his victim, threaten him, or punish him by becoming increasingly violent.
Yeah, so that's absolutely brutal, and it's going to escalate from this point onwards. The torture logs, or the disturbing diary journal type thing that he kept here, he would basically go off now whilst draining the corpse of Jerry. He would go off and get a camera, take a load of photos of this act, and he described in his journal as he only felt ready to dismember the body once he was sure it was, use the word, empty. And that just really, I imagine, Dan, for you, obviously with your different perspectives, because for those that don't know, I was thinking while Tom was explaining that part of the story, when we do go through these different cases, Dan, for those that don't know, does sometimes experience certain parts in first person, and I just imagine that part there was particularly challenging with all the detail there.
Shocking, and I 100% was first person in Berdella's mind there, but it's so shocking to have this contrast of a pillar of a community, so intertwined, so respected, so almost needed in a community, to this monster draining Jerry's body of all the blood and disposing him like literal trash. It's shocking.
And it's almost as if this is hence the nickname. Obviously, it's almost as if he's become the butcher in this basement, has a butcher shop in his basement, because in terms of the disposal, and then to just simply put it outside as if carefully wrap it so that it's not going to leak in the bags, and it's just this is and it's also just happened to be offering him a ride that night to this dance contest, and then decided, actually, I've got the means in my house and the tools to do this, and deciding to then go through with it and document it.
April 10th, 1985. 9 months later, apparently without incident, a 20-year-old by the name of Robert Sheldon, who at various stages of his young, vulnerable life had rented rooms from Berdella whilst travelling around the United States, randomly showed up at 431 Charlotte Street asking for a place to stay for a while. He had apparently walked out of his job at a manufacturing plant and needed somewhere to go. Nobody knew the young man was there. Nobody would really know if he went missing for an extended period of time, and though he wasn't a big fan of this individual, Berdella could not believe his luck. Needing a boost to his income, Berdella let him in and gave him a room for the week. 2 days later, their friendly arrangement would suddenly evolve into a living nightmare for Sheldon. Apparently, after a large part of his rent had already been paid up front, Berdella returned home from work on the evening of the 12th of April to find Sheldon incredibly drunk in his home. This seems to somehow ignite a fury with Berdella that hadn't been seen for many months. Berdella proceeded to secretly drug Sheldon after he fell asleep, before binding him in a similar position to how he had held Jerry Howell in a bedroom on the second floor. And we'll pop up on screen now a picture of Sheldon passed out that Berdella took. However, there was a key difference between Howell and Sheldon for Berdella. Berdella had zero attraction or sexual interest with Sheldon, and also had a simmering dislike for him under the surface. He viewed him as annoying and an inconvenience. As a result, he decided to torture Sheldon for the following 3 days, causing the young man significant prolonged pain as he drifted in and out of a drugged state.
So yeah, as Dan mentioned, we've popped an image on screen of which Berdella took of Sheldon after he was drugged. There will be a total of 368 Polaroids or snapshot prints taken by Berdella alongside these many journals that he was keeping, and they progressively get more and more disturbing. When you Google this case or the victims of this case, a lot of the Polaroids do come up. A lot of them are far too graphic to have ever been publicly released, but it is highly, highly disturbing.
Essentially, Berdella wanted to take his anger at the rest of the world out on Sheldon, who just happened to have arrived at the house at that specific time. Before we describe the specific disturbing actions he took, here is how Berdella framed what happened.
I saw Robert as someone or something to which I could express some of the anger and frustration I had toward other people. It was just a physical and mental satisfaction. That's really all it was.
During the 3 days that he was held, Sheldon's wrists were tightly bound with piano wire, which ate deeply into his skin any time that he moved or reacted to other trauma that was being inflicted. He had his ears filled with caulking sealant, which is a silicone or acrylic material used to seal gaps in houses, doors and windows. He had industrial drain cleaner repeatedly poured into his eyes and mouth in an attempt to blind his captive and destroy his vocal cords, with his left eye being regularly swabbed with the fluid. He was regularly injected with chlorpromazine. He was repeatedly punched, kicked and choked by his captor. And he also had needles forced under each of his fingertips. At various points during his horrendous ordeal, Sheldon could not move, he could not speak, he could not see, and he could not hear. All he could do was wait for the next assault. It is highly likely that his torture would have lasted for several more days. However, the chance visit of a roofer arrived at the property in order to carry out some scheduled work, which forced Berdella to quickly, quote-unquote, dispose of his prisoner. He placed a large piece of plastic over Sheldon's head before tightening it with a rope around his neck. After a few minutes of struggle, Sheldon died. Berdella then carried him up to a bathroom in a bedroom of the 3rd floor of the house, where he then began to dismember the corpse. He then buried various parts in his garden, including the skull, before disposing the rest with his household rubbish. However, it would later be proven that at some point over the next few days, or even years, Berdella dug up the skull, thoroughly cleaned it, and stored it in a closet on the 2nd floor of the house.
Yeah, so this one is a significant escalation. It's one of the most brutal murders I've ever heard details of. I mean, basically anything that caused Sheldon to move would result in piano wire eating into his wrists, his skin, his ankles. He had his ears filled with caulking sealant, as Dan mentioned, so he wouldn't have been able to hear when Berdella was entering and leaving the room. Bleach, drain cleaner, repeatedly poured into eyes and mouth, so he couldn't see or speak, make any noise. And if that wouldn't work, he'd then swab his eyes with the fluid as well. And this apparently is all because this man turned up at his house, agreed rent, paid his rent up front, and then Berdella came home one night and he was drunk in his house, and that was it. It's awful. June 22nd, 1985. 2 months later, another completely chance encounter occurred that would drastically alter the trajectory of one young man's life. During a particularly rough thunderstorm, 27-year-old Mark Wallace, who just happened to be working in a garden on Charlotte Street, took shelter underneath the roof of Berdella's tool shed. Quickly noticing this, Berdella, who had employed the young man previously, invited Wallace into his home in order to have coffee and get out of the rain. The pair sat and talked for a few minutes, with it allegedly becoming very clear during their conversation that Wallace was highly stressed and depressed. If Berdella's version of events is to be believed, which again, we kind of have this for every incident here, he somehow managed to convince Wallace to allow him to inject chlorpromazine into his system. So apparently this was consensual, but again, the only words we have to go off are Berdella's. He described the drug as something that would calm him down and help to relax him. Within 30 minutes of the drug being administered, Berdella made the choice to claim his third victim. Over the next 24 hours, Mark Wallace was tortured relentlessly. He was taken to the second story of the house, where he was bound and gagged. He had hypodermic needles placed all over his body. He had them forcibly stabbed and broken off into various muscles on his back. Any time that he drifted out of consciousness, Berdella applied alligator clamps to his nipples and gave him an almost lethal electric shock. The following day, June 23rd at 7 p.m, is noted in Berdella's morbid journal as the date and time that Wallace passed away. According to the entry, the young man died as a result of, quote, the drugs, the gag, and the lack of oxygen. Like Sheldon, he was dismembered in a bathtub on the third floor of the house, and Berdella had taken Polaroid photographs of Sheldon and Wallace whilst they were unconscious. And yeah, this image of Mark Wallace is one showing him shortly after he was injected and kind of passed out there, laying down. And again, these Polaroids are only going to get more and more disturbing. September 26th of 1985, a few months later, completely out of the blue, Berdella received a phone call from an acquaintance named Walter James Ferris, who by complete chance asked if he could stay at his home for a week or two. And this has been the case for all of his other victims so far. They just happened to be in the area or just happened to have an arrangement with him. And it feels like those 2 or 3 years where he was really networking and quote unquote helping all of these individuals get off the street and into his house, he's made lasting impressions on these people that, just happened to, resume contact with him. So just like the 3 men prior, 25-year-old Ferris had absolutely no idea of the danger that awaited him. That evening, after the pair met for catch-up drinks at a local bar, Berdella lured him back to the house under the guise of a friendly visit, before he then secretly drugged his food with crushed tranquilizers and bound him face down to a bed with his arms tied behind his back. For every minute of the next 27 hours, Walter Ferris endured near constant, escalating torture. He received repeated 7,700 volt electrical shots to his neck, shoulders, and testicles. He had hypodermic needles violently forced into highly sensitive areas, and relentless physical and sexual assault. Over time, Ferris grew delirious, barely able to sit still or breathe steadily, until Berdella recorded in his journal that Ferris became 86. And 86 was basically a slang or a euphemism term used by Berdella for representing death or the end of a project, as somehow he referred to his victims as the end of projects.
I believe that's a term they use in restaurants, so if 86 something, it means throw it away.
Mm.
And the Polaroid for James Ferris or Walter Ferris, again, is highly disturbing. You can see hands bound behind his back. You can see numerous wounds all over his body, and you can see needles kind of hanging from his shoulders there. It's highly disturbing. Like his earlier victims, Ferris was then dismembered and disposed of, leaving behind only fragments and photographs of his suffering. Berdella would later describe his victims as follows.
These were not people that I thought of. Once I had them bound and was using them, they became something other than people to me. I never thought of it to the level of, what if one of these bodies ever gets loose?
These bodies. That's all they are to him. Ugh.
June 17th, 1986. Nearly a year later, 23-year-old Todd Stoops, a drug addict and occasional sex worker, crossed paths with Berdella whilst the pair were walking around Liberty Memorial Park. The pair were very happy to see one another, as Stoops had previously rented a room from Berdella 2 years prior with his wife, who he was not presently in contact with. Invited back to the house under the pretense of lunch and Berdella paying him $13 for sex, Stoops was soon overpowered, drugged, and held captive for 2 weeks. He gagged him and placed a chair leg behind his back, which he bound his hands under. During that time, Berdella escalated terror slowly, repeated and drawn out 7,700 volt electrical shocks, injections of drain cleaner to his neck in an attempt to silence him, extensive beatings, and suffocating restraints. He claimed he was trying to create a cooperative, long-lasting sex slave due to his immense attraction to the man. Which kind of reminds me of Dharma a little bit, with the kind of wanting the zombie, wanting people to stay there and be in full control of people. It's very similar kind of vibes to that.
These, of all of them that we've seen so far, this Polaroid is the one that, as soon as I saw it, it's absolutely heartbreaking, and it's also very, very terrifying. It's showing Stoops basically receiving one of these electric shocks, and you can just see the agony this is causing, and the terror in his eyes is really disturbing.
Berdella went so far as to administer electric shocks to his eyelids in an attempt to blind him. During that dreadful fortnight, food and water was kept from him, and any of Stoops' pleas for food or mercy went unanswered, with his body gradually failing under the constant assault and malnourishment. He begged Berdella for a sandwich and a drink, to the point that he started crying inconsolably when he was refused. Angered by this, he placed his fist into Stoops' anus, causing a significant rupture to the anal wall, as well as extensive bleeding and discharge. Unbeknownst to Berdella, this eventually caused Stoops to go into septic shock. He offered him a mixture of ice cream and canned soup as a warped way of apology, but Stoops could not keep anything down. By the final day, he had become so weak that he could barely breathe when sitting upright. After 2 weeks of torment beyond imagination, on July 1st of 1986, Stoops died as a combination of septic shock caused by severe internal injuries, infection and blood loss, becoming yet another victim in Berdella's meticulously catalogued reign of horror. He was dismembered before his remains were scattered in his household waste. I think obviously we'll get onto it. There's this interview I saw with Berdella on YouTube.
Yeah.
And he comes across so normal that it's terrifying. A bit, as I said, a bit, maybe lacking confidence in a way. He's not like arrogant with how he's talking. It's just the cruelty that he's showing these people, and obviously the unthinkable torture and everything like that he's doing. He can't put he doesn't compute in my head when you see him talking to camera, talking.
You do get, as you said, that awkward vibe from him, but it's really, that could be anyone's neighbor. That could be, someone that could very much easily see him, doing the neighborhood watch kind of thing, the patrols. You could see that. You could see him being a chef. You could see him owning an antique cellar. You can see all of that, and it's just each victim he's claiming here seems to be a project, as he's referring them to, and he's testing the boundaries of what they can withstand, what they can withhold, how long they can stay alive under certain situations. But these injuries to Stoops and the image is absolutely haunting.
So we move forward a year now to the 23rd of June 1987, a young man who became Berdella's final murder. 20-year-old Larry Wayne Pearson came under his influence through a casual friendship that was built after Pearson walked into Berdella's antique shop and informed him in friendly conversation that he was obsessed with wizards and witchcraft as a child. Like Game of Thrones. From there, Berdella invited Pearson, who was unemployed at the time, to stay at his house in exchange for completing various household chores. What began as exchanging lodging and chores gradually became captivity. However, Berdella would later boldly tell investigators that he never intended to take Pearson until he grew sick of him not looking for a job whilst living under his roof. A more reliable possibility was that not long after the pair watched the film Creepshow 2 together, Pearson made a joke about Berdella robbing gay men around the Wichita area. This solidified Pearson's unfortunate fate. The pattern was the same. He got the young man drunk, he secretly drugged him, he ambushed him and confined him to the basement of the house. Here, he was hung by his hands against a brick wall. Over the next 6 weeks, Pearson endured repeated torture, electrical shocks all over his body, syringes stuck into his neck and genitals, having his hands and fingers broken with metal rods, injections of drain cleaner to his larynx, and relentless physical and sexual abuse. Unlike previous victims, Pearson earned Berdella's twisted trust through being submissive and compliant, a cruel reward that allowed him to survive the basement for extended periods of time, and even be allowed up in other floors of the house. During the last part of his 6 weeks in captivity, Pearson taught himself to sleep without moving, to avoid upsetting Berdella and risking more torture or a return to the basement. During a moment where Berdella was forcing Pearson to force a sexual act on him, Pearson purposely bit down on Berdella's penis, and as a result, Pearson was repeatedly bludgeoned with a tree branch and subsequently suffocated to death. A tree branch is random, isn't it?
Maybe it's in the garden.
Maybe. His body was then dismembered in the basement, and his decapitated head was temporarily stored in the freezer within the same bag he was suffocated in. Berdella then drove to a local hospital in order to receive treatment on his badly bitten penis. Astonishingly, whilst at the hospital, Berdella filled in an assault report claiming that a man named Larry Pearson had bitten his penis during consensual oral sex.
That's quite bold.
Yeah, feels like Berdella's bitten off more than he could chew there. I mean, it's very bold to say the man that you then killed is the person that did it.
Whose head is in your freezer at the time.
Not in my freezer, but yeah.
No, yeah, sorry.
That's right.
Clarity.
Yeah, it's very bold. And yeah, some of the sentences I've had to read during this episode has been absolutely horrific. As to be expected with the darkest series of all time.
Yeah, him blaming and naming his victim for causing him any harm whatsoever, whereas he refers to them as bodies and waste.
March 29th, 1988, 1 a.m. 8 months after murdering his sixth victim, we return to the scene from the beginning of our episode. A now 39-year-old Berdella had picked up 22-year-old sex worker by the name of Christopher Bryson, who was hitchhiking on the outskirts of Kansas City, with the promise of paying him for sex once they got to his house. As soon as they stepped into the home, Berdella struck him over the back of the head with an iron bar. He was then forcibly strapped to Berdella's bed, where he was violently assaulted and tortured in a similar fashion to the previous 6 victims. This time, Berdella chose to swab Bryson with ammonia, a chemical compound widely used in cleaning products, fertilizers, and explosives. While Bryson was trying to comprehend what was happening to him, Berdella calmly stated the following: "The only things you need to think about are you, me, and this house. You did not choose to be here, but you are. For you to survive being here, and for you to, make it, could either be rough or it could be easy. If I grow to like you, and I trust you, then I could do special things for you, such as buy you cigarettes, pick up a movie on the way home from work, and so forth. Don't try to fight me, or you'll just get more of what you had earlier. You see, what you got is nothing compared to what you can have. I've gotten this far with other people before, and they're dead now because of the mistakes they made."
Yeah, this is one of the additionally harrowing details here. Apparently, many of the captives that he would hold towards the end, he would repeatedly show them Polaroids of what he'd done to other people, told them the stories of what he'd done and shown them their journals and said, look, if you do this, you do that. If you're compliant, this won't happen to you. But nonetheless, it still would go on to be exceedingly violent for everyone. There was nothing they could do to make it an easier experience for them. It was, from the moment they were in the step foot in the house, it was completely under the control of Berdella, and it's, yeah.
And the terrifying thing, the special things he could do is buy them cigarettes.
Yeah, get your
movie. Christ. During the morning of April 2nd, 1988, after more than 4 days of unrelenting physical, sexual, mental and emotional abuse, Bryson had gained an increased amount of trust from Berdella. He was still routinely sodomized and also had drain cleaner injected. Fuck me, that one gets me, man. Drain cleaner in
the larynx. Is that your vocal cords, your larynx? Is that where it? So it's intentionally it's not just to cause harm, it's so you can't shout, I can't scream.
That's a very first person one I had. Always with needles. He was still routinely sodomized and also had drain cleaner injected into his larynx so that he was not able to scream or shout. As a result of this newly built trust, he was allowed to have his hands bound in front of him rather than behind his back. He was also allowed in the second-story bedroom, and he was also allowed to watch television whilst Berdella was out of the house for work. This case would have a very different ending were it not for one small packet of pocket matches. In a rush to head to work one morning, Berdella accidentally left a packet of matches not far from when Bryson was bound. Bryson waited a few minutes after Berdella had left before he quickly picked up the matches and burnt through his restraints. As the door was locked and he did not have the strength to kick it down, Bryson made the decision to bravely jump from the second floor of the house. He shattered a bone in his foot upon landing in the front garden. And as we described at the start of the episode, he then ran through the neighbourhood wearing nothing but a dog collar, where he was able to find a meter man who immediately contacted the police. Arriving police quickly rushed Bryson to a nearby hospital, who informed officers that Berdella had shown him dozens of Polaroids of dead men, whilst two other officers discreetly monitored the property, waiting for Berdella to return. Officers quickly noted that, in addition to the dog collar and broken foot, Bryson had red, swollen eyes and visible scars and burn marks all over his entire body. Police immediately radioed a request to obtain a search warrant for 4315 Charlotte Street.
So later that day, Berdella was arrested by police as he returned from work, and he was arrested on charges relating to the kidnapping and sexual assault of Christopher Bryson. As he was being detained, he outright refused to allow officers to search his property, but a search warrant was approved. In stepping inside the property, investigators quickly found the room that Bryson had described. A second-floor bedroom fitted with burnt ropes still attached to the bedposts, an electrical transformer wired directly to the frame, and a metal tray holding syringes, drug bottles, swabs, and eye drops. The bed itself showed signs of being deeply worn, and it was bloody, surrounded by ropes, belts, and an iron pipe. Silent evidence that restraints had been used repeatedly, and that those held there had fought desperately to break free. Investigators also uncovered hundreds of photographs, 334 Polaroids, and 34 snapshot prints, documenting Bryson and numerous other men, some alive, some dead, many captured during acts of torture. Alongside restraints, sexual devices, narcotics material, and hypodermic needles, they also found Berdella's meticulous torture logs, newspaper clippings about missing men, and personal identification belonging to victims who had never been found. So yeah, at this point now they're realizing there are far more victims of this individual. There's far more going on at the surface, and that they potentially are now dealing with a serial killer. And yeah, I mean, some of those discoveries are, completely harrowing. While searching the house and its grounds, investigators found a human skull in a closet on the second floor of the property, along with a partially decomposed human head in the back garden. They also discovered several human vertebrae marked by hacksaw and knife cuts hidden in a hallway, as well as several human teeth stored in 2 envelopes. In the basement, both a hacksaw and a miter saw were located, and a chainsaw was also found covered in blood, flesh, and pubic hairs. Luminal tests showed that the basement floor of Berdella's property and 2 plastic rubbish bins were still heavily saturated with blood. And yeah, I mean, that scene is, we only have external images of the house, and it does look quite striking on its own. As Tom referenced, he would later do an interview from prison, and he turned down many different opportunities to do it, but he chose this one journalist and this one station to actually do it with, and he comes across as so normal to then describe this scene, and the house that he was living in, a functioning torture room and butcher shop. We'll show you a clip of that now.
It seems to me that you're suggesting that had the police done their job, had they followed the leads, had they really been on your case prior to April 2nd, 1988, they would have caught you, and some of this suffering could have been prevented.
Maybe not caught me. Scared me off, maybe. Prevented things from happening after how? Definitely.
In a way, do you wish they had?
Yes.
Berdella's accusation of the police were matched by his complaints about media coverage, yet he clearly relished the publicity. For example, disputing police and newspaper reports that he held and tortured Larry W. Pearson for 43 days. He only tortured Pearson for 5 days, he told us. And he was especially interested in reports that his crimes were influenced by a movie, The Collector, in which a disturbed man kidnaps a young woman and imprisons her until she dies.
I pointed out this thing in my background that in retrospect may have some importance. I never said that the movie made me do it.
I think it's one thing as well is how offended he is by what he's been labelled. Like, he seems to have a real problem with being spoken about as if he's a monster, and it's like, the things he's done, I can't understand that, how he doesn't see why people would view him in that way. And as I said, the thing that, like I was saying earlier about his childhood and what he'd go on to become, but also the fact that he was able to be such a pillar of community in a certain essence. From that interview, I don't get that energy from him either. I don't get the sense that he would be someone that would confidently talk to people, be able to haggle deals across the world and get these antiques over and be successful in business, and that be able to be like so forthright, because he just does seem like a nervous, like awkward human being. So it's a very jarring character. And yeah, a monster, 100%. But it's a very... You wouldn't see that interview and be able to tell what he's done, which is a terrifying thought. Like you said earlier on, Dan, you never know what's going on behind closed doors or with your neighbours, apart from if they're new neighbours and you like them.
Yeah, jump to that conclusion at your peril. But yeah, no, like I said at the start, he's not at all what I expected when you hear that title and you see the detail, which again is a terrifying thought in itself. But he's not what I expected, and he is very awkward in this interview, and again gets very offended by being called a monster. And he's talking about, you know, his victims were the same as him and they've been labelled, and he was talking about basically the way the media have spanned this case to give him this name, and he's not happy about that either, and the media have treated him the same way that he treated his victims, which is a fucking wild comparison. But yeah, he basically, from the arrest part here, he was very, you know, despite overwhelming evidence, surviving witness accounts, hundreds of pieces of self-taken photographic evidence, a written journal in which he extensively detailed almost every injury inflicted on each victim. And I mean, most victims would have several pages, which is that he would timestamp what he did to his victims. Overwhelming evidence against himself. He decided, despite all of this, to remain silent and plead not guilty. And basically the work then began on identifying all these other men who were, you know, in these Polaroids and had not been seen, had been missing for many years. So that was a project in itself. And they basically were able to identify them through a combination of photographic recognition from family members, which is, again, imagine how much of a harrowing ordeal that was for family members to see their loved ones in that way. They'd also identify them through the correlation of dental records associated with missing people. Some of their bodies were never recovered due to being buried at various landfill sites. Now, after initially pleading not guilty, Berdella later agreed to a plea bargain in a bid to avoid the death penalty. And in doing this, for someone that was not going to say anything and very shy and, avoiding any responsibility of guilt, he decided to speak at the court, and his testimony lasted for 3 days. So he wanted to put his victims' families through that, him talking about what he did and who he was and how his life had been unfair to him, for 3 days of testimony. Absolutely crazy. So after agreeing that plea bargain, he was eventually sentenced to 2 counts of life in prison without the possibility of parole. And in prison, Berdella apparently repeatedly complained that officials were withholding his heart medication. He would write numerous letters about this and file several separate grievances about his health rapidly declining whilst in prison, which is ironic to have your health rapidly declining whilst in captivity. However, there might have been some truth to his complaints, because on the 8th of October 1992, after several reports of experiencing severe chest pain, Berdella was taken to the prison hospital and pronounced dead as a result of a heart attack at just 43 years old, prompting the judge who was at his trial to later remark, "Could not have happened to a nicer guy." So there you have it. That was the case of Robert Berdella, the Kansas City butcher.
Yes. I think, like you said, Ben, it does feel a little bit more classic ICMAP. But yeah, it has some very like, as I said, some of those lines, which I don't want to get clipped up, that I read, very dark indeed. I mean, it has some Robert Picton aspects, some Ed Gein aspects, Gein, whatever you want to say. But yeah, truly just disturbing case. And yes, the interview that we've mentioned numerous times within this case, we are going to do a little kind of reaction to that and discuss it over on the website, just because it's 8 minutes, and as I said, it's fascinating to watch. So we'll be looking at that over on icmap.co.uk. So if you want to check that out, please feel free to go over there. And you also get access to over 200, nearly 250 minisodes over there, and lots of other content. So why not, eh?
Actually, do you know what as well, Tom?
Why not?
Let me just say, I've done it again, to be honest with you. And I didn't consult either of you, actually. But basically, you can sign up to icmap.co.uk completely for free for 7 days. And then if you want to cancel, you can within that 7 days. So please come on in, binge what you like. And then if you want to leave, leave. But if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay too. So cheers.
5 years of work, Tom, he's given away.
Hey.
Yeah.
Free.
Pissing it away. There you go. No, do. Please do. If come on inside, have a little look, and then you might think, you know what? I like it in this here place. And then you might want to carry on. Who knows? But please check it out. A lot of hard work goes on behind the scenes and for the website, and we do love our cult over there. You also unlock things like early access to merch, the episodes, you get early releases for the main episodes, lots of incredible things, and extra discounts on merch over there as well. So why not check it out? But yes, guys, as we've been doing this series, we are doing a thing called the decompression session at the end of the episode, because it's particularly dark. We want a light moment. I mean, there's been a few little jokey moments in this case. I think it's a bit more classically ICMAP, like we said. But we are going to have a little decompression now, a moment where we can kind of just move away from the case mentally, move away from it, have a little chat, discussion, and try to just, a little, we say, a little palate cleanser. So this week we have received an email from Stephanie916.
Go on, Stephanie916.
Hi, Stephanie916.
There you go. And it's quite a simple question, but I liked it because of the simplicity. And basically it was saying, if your house was on fire, your pets aren't there, your loved ones aren't there, your house now, and you could save 2 items from the house. And let's not just do monetary items, guys, because obviously covered in insurance. 2 things you can save from the house and the house fire. So something that's a bit more meaning to you. What things would you be saving?
My mind went straight to 2 photographs that I've got. One is
like
me, Soph, and little Elliot, my nephew, and the other one is a picture of my family.
That's a great answer.
One of them is a guy getting electric shock and you button down his car.
Fucking hell.
Ben, anything springs to mind for you?
Yeah, the first thing I thought of, although Dan's kind of trumped it, is there's a teddy bear on top of my fridge, which my dad bought the day I was born. I'd get that for sure. I can't really think of a second thing, so maybe I would just take this lovely holy flask, because this is lovely. I imagine it might be fireproof, the quality that goes into it. But second thing, I do actually have my granddad's last can of shandy in the house, and so I'll take that. There's my 2 things for sure.
That's a nice idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to preface this and say that with the taking of it, all the things that belong to my wife, they would be, it's not a case of you going, I'm thinking about myself. It's meant to be more about a personal question about what you would take, not like you're taking it on their behalf of them, right?
Yeah.
So anything I take is more just looking after me in this situation. Yeah, I should have thought about it more before obviously asking the question. But I've got a cardigan that was my dad's that I wear regularly. It's not like a fancy cardigan. It's, if anything, it's slightly shrunken, but I really like it. So I would take that. What else would I take?
A lot of people looking at the Mo Sislak cardboard cutout behind you thinking...
But you fucked up a bit because the cabin's not on fire, mate. It's the house. So
true.
This is all safe.
Fair play.
We've got mounted on the wall like Sandy's first collar, and it's tiny. It's very sweet. Cute. So I perhaps would take that as well, just because it's a sweet little thing. So that'd be my 2 things. Fingers crossed No one of our houses burned down, of course. But yeah, thank you for that, Stephanie. It's a simple question, but it's nice. It's a bit of a different one. But as I said, guys, if you want to get involved, if there are any questions you want to ask, send us an email over at hello@icmap.co.uk. It can be a voice note. We love a voice note. Try and do it a minute long if you're doing one. We've got some voice notes heading our way, I know, for future episodes. But it can be something lighthearted. It can be, it can be an agony aunt kind of style of question, or it can be one simple like Stephanie did there, just a simple question that get us thinking a little bit.
And in addition, boys, I think we should open it up even further and let people know our direct phone line that people can give us a shout on. To clarify, this is just over WhatsApp. You can't dial the number. Please don't try and dial the number. But if you have WhatsApp, give this number an ad, send us a voice note. Don't make it too long. 60 seconds is great. But if you want to tell us some stories, some spooky stories, some funny stories, some questions, anything you like, send it over to 017 673 08990.
Yeah, please, don't call it between the hours of midnight and 10 a.m.
Just don't call it.
Don't call it at all. Sorry, don't call it at all. Even if you're tempted, just don't do it.
But yes, little rule. Producer Dan doesn't like things over a minute. Let's try and stick close to that. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys. So please get involved. We'd love to hear people from all over the world. Would be lovely.
Yeah.
But yes, guys, it's a time as well. A little lightheartedness, a bit of lookalikes. So mine is fairly straightforward. It's Zach Galifianakis, and it's from The Candidate. I believe the film is The Candidate film, Bear?
Yes, yeah. He also plays a fictional brother of his, where he talks about owning a dog called Funyuns. Funyuns.
Your car smells like Funyuns, and I'm like, what, my dog? Because I named my dog Funyuns because he likes to eat Funyuns all the time. He's like, no, I didn't know your dog's name was Funyuns. And I said, yeah, I named my dog Funyuns because he eats Funyuns all the time. He goes, no, I was just talking about Funyuns. So every time I feed my dog, I think of Zach.
Okay, so it's Zach Galifianakis, it's the moustache and the eyes. I also thought there's definitely something else there. I'd love to hear what the audience think, if there's any lookalikes as they think.
Yes.
I think something about it was a bit John Goodman-like to me, but I couldn't find any picture of John Goodman that looked like that, so I don't know where I was going with that. But that's the only one I've got today, is Zach Galifianakis.
Yes, agreed. I think there's a tiny bit of John Belushi in there, maybe. Zach Galifianakis is a good shout. There is definitely, if the audience can help us, there is someone like he looks identical to. I can't tell if it's a cartoon or an actor or a comedian. My dad also chimed in with a politician by the name of Lech Walesa. I think it's just the mustache. But
I've got a very loose one. I mean, it's so loose, but it's something in the eyes. I agree with you, boys. There's someone that he looks like, but in the eyes, I can see Joaquin Phoenix playing Berdella.
Oh,
but not the rest of the face. It's just the eyes.
She, or something.
Or Still Here.
Could be the one.
Crazy beard.
Good shout, Dan.
There you go. Well, guys, follow us on the socials and Instagram. We pop up a little lookalikes, a voting thing, where you guys can let us know what you think and have a little vote. And yes, and Ben, we've forgotten again with the cryptic clues to talk about which one you gave for this week. But let's remind the listeners what you said cryptic clue wise for this one.
It was that barbecue sauce Billy. If you're a barbecue sauce connoisseur like myself, you know that the best barbecue sauce is made in Kansas City, and Billy Butcher, the boys. Billy Butcher. You no, that's bleep that. The Kansas City Butcher.
There you go. And this
week,
week,
bad ones this season, really bad, and it's going to get worse. So the cryptic clue for next week's episode, the midway point of series 13, sounds like a season that's dry as heck.
That is quite possibly.
Might possibly be the worst one.
Please, no, after you.
Yeah, quite possibly. That's quite possibly the worst one he's ever fucking done. So there you go. That's an achievement.
Lovely, Ben, but that is.
It's okay. You don't need to.
If you struggle, you can reach out. We can try and help and assist. Don't struggle.
Go for it.
Don't suffer in silence. I mean, you're throwing it right at me now without any run up.
Yeah, Oof.
I would have probably gone around something to do with Father Ted.
Oh, Yeah.
But yeah, I can't do it for a standing start. But yes, let us know if you can figure that out. Then fucking well done to you.
We'll send a packet of Holy out to you if you get that one.
Ooh.
Yeah, 10% off. Please do, or £5 off your first order. ICMAP 5, or for 10%, just use ICMAP, and it really helps out the podcast. And this is genuinely a really good product, so please consider it.
And you buy one of these tubs, like I've got the Piranha one. Let me grab it. 50 drinks in that.
Flippin' heck, man.
Wow.
And you're gonna be having one a day maximum, unless you're an absolute madman. One a day maximum. That's 50. That's just nearly 2 months worth in one jar, which is
improve your relationship with hydration. I've neglected that relationship for many years, and thanks to Holy, I'm back on the horse.
Your skin's already looking
off the
better.
horse.
Yeah, and you're more regular now.
Thank you all. Look what it's done. It's just a week.
Yeah. There you go. Anyway, guys, we'll be back in next week with a brand new dark case, as is the darkest series ever. But until then, like we always say,
we say this all the time.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Unless it's going to the local pond and doing that. Jesus Christ.
Give a duck some seed. Don't give them bread. Give them some seed.
That's a very good point, Tom.
And don't leave that pond with their head. Can't stress that enough.
Yep.
See you later, guys.
Knowledge.
Toodle pip.